Okay, this is exercise 8.4. Again, I'm going to do numbers 1 through 10, though I know that's not necessarily what was assigned. And I also know we went over some of these in class, but we'll do some review for those of you who maybe weren't there or who just need some refresher. All right, so number 1. Professor McGornery, I do not allow any questions in class. If I allow one student to ask a question, someone else will have a question. If someone else asks a question, another will. Pretty soon I'll be doing nothing but answering questions. All right, now this is a pretty common fallacy that we did talk about in class, and the idea is if you take a first step, you're going to start sliding down a slope that's going to lead to a very bad end, right? So that's why this fallacy is called the slippery slope fallacy. And you see these all the time about almost any controversial topic. The gist of this is, well, that first step isn't so bad in and of itself, but it's where it will eventually lead that's really bad. And I think I mentioned in class, slippery slopes sometimes happen, right? Sometimes we do slide down a slippery slope. Imagine a month ago, somebody who was saying, if coronavirus gets out of China, the whole world's going to be on lockdown. Well, that's a slippery slope argument that happened to pretty much come true, right? So, again, as I mentioned at the end of the last video, fallacies are contextual. So it's not that slippery slopes never happen. It's that arguing in terms of slippery slopes is generally very hard to evaluate because it involves predictions about the future, and anyone can make those since they can't be tested at the moment. So a slippery slope fallacy is when you say, well, if we take this first step, it's going to lead to disaster down the road. All right. Number 2, actor Joe Blow says nuclear power is dangerous, so it is dangerous. Again, if you start with the question, why is this bad reasoning? It's pretty obvious in this case. Why should we believe what actor Joe Blow says about nuclear power? If he's an actor, presumably he's not an expert on nuclear power, and so this passage is appealing to an irrelevant authority. Right, so this happens quite a bit. Advertising is full of examples of this because advertisers like to get celebrities to endorse their product, even though celebrities don't necessarily know anything about their product. All right, so an appeal to an irrelevant authority is when you say, accept my conclusion because Joe Blow says it's true, when in fact Joe Blow is not an authority on the subject. Number 3, drinking water cures the flu. Every time I have the flu, I drink water and my condition improves within a day or two. All right. So again, ask, why is this bad reasoning? It's pretty clear that most people drink water all the time, whether they have the flu or not, right? So if you had the flu and you drank water and you got better, it's not necessarily the case that the water was the cause of getting better, right? So this fallacy is called false cause because you're assuming that something is the cause of something else for not really any good reason. Or, I mean, the reason here is just because they go together. So this is a specific kind of false cause fallacy called fallacy of accidental correlation. Right? Correlation is just when two things go together. So drinking water goes together with getting over the flu, and so you assume the correlation means that one caused the other, when really they just happen to go together. All right, so false cause fallacy is the answer number 3. Number 4, America, love it or leave it. You don't love it, so move to Cuba. This one should look familiar from if you watch the video for exercise 8.1. Notice it starts with this choice between two things, right? Love it or leave it. So remember, a choice between two things is often called a dilemma. And the problem again here is that these are not the only two choices, love it or leave it, right? So because those aren't the only two choices, this is committing the fallacy of false dilemma. All right, you can fail to love America but not want to leave. Like maybe you really like it a lot, but you think it has its faults. All right, so those are not the only two choices, love it or leave it, and therefore it's a false dilemma. Number 5, we have to buy a car. We'll buy either an expensive one or a cheap one. We can't afford to buy an expensive one, so we'll buy the cheap one for $500. Again, notice either or. And either or, again, is often a way of stating a dilemma. Right? A dilemma, you have two choices, and if they're not really the only two choices you have, then again, it's committing the fallacy of false dilemma. So in this case, cheap or expensive are not the only two choices. You could buy a middle-priced vehicle. So again, false dilemma is committed whenever the situation is presented as if there are two choices when really there are more than two choices. Number 6, the Constitution guarantees freedom of speech. Therefore, it was okay that we walked into the lecture hall and began screaming obscenities at the speaker. All right, now this is a fallacy we haven't really talked much about yet. I'm going to shift to the Chapter 8 text. All right, this one is called the fallacy of accident. All right, and this is on page 211 of the text. All right. So the fallacy of accident it says here, most general principles or rules are not meant to be applied in literally every case. There are usually intended exceptions. This fallacy is committed when a general rule or principle is applied in a particular situation, but the rule is not intended for the situation. The situation is a recognized exception to the general rule. All right. So with respect to freedom of speech, again, it doesn't mean that all speech is protected by the Constitution. There are some kinds of speech that aren't protected, and screaming obscenities at somebody who's been invited to speak is one of those exceptions. So for this one, we would call it the fallacy of accident. Okay, number 7. I'll never go to another doctor. I've been to 2, and they didn't help me at all. All right, so this one should look familiar. He's making a general conclusion about all doctors based on a sample of 2 doctors that didn't help him or her. So he's generalizing, making a generalization about all doctors, but he's making it too quickly since he has only seen 2 doctors. So quick, another word for quick is hasty. So this is a hasty generalization. Okay, number 8, it's against the law to cut someone with a sharp instrument. Dr. Verrier, the heart surgeon, cuts people every day. He should be arrested, right? So again, it is against the law to cut people with sharp instruments, but surgery is a generally accepted exception to that rule. So as we just talked about with number 6, fallacy of accident. In every case, there are usually intended exceptions. So again, this fallacy is committed when a general rule or principle is applied in a particular situation, but the rule is not intended for that situation, right? So again, the rule against cutting people with sharp objects was not intended to apply to surgery. So number 8, fallacy of accident. Number 9, the Constitution guarantees the free exercise of religion. Our religion, which is a revival of the Aztec religion that practices mass human sacrifice, should therefore be protected by law. Right? Again, free exercise of religion is a general rule that people should be allowed to exercise their religion, but that doesn't apply to religions where mass human sacrifice is permitted. So again, that's a recognized exception to the rule is religions are not allowed where violence is committed against the followers. So those are recognized exceptions to the rule about freedom of religion. So again, fallacy of accident. And number 10, I ate your soup at noon and I got sick at 3. So your soup made me sick, right? So again, this is saying because I ate your soup at noon and I got sick after that, the soup caused me to get sick. So there's a causal claim being made here. And again, it's the fallacy of false cause, because just because one thing comes before another thing, it doesn't mean the first thing caused the second thing. Right? This has a Latin name. It's called post hoc ergo propter hoc, which means after this, therefore because of this. Right? After I ate your soup, I got sick. Therefore, because of your soup, I got sick. Right? So that's just a kind of false cause fallacy, and that's the answer to number 10. All right. So I hope you're starting to get the hang of identifying these fallacies. There are some other possible solutions to some of these problems. So if you had questions about any of them, you should go to the discussion forum that's provided for exercise 8.4 and post them there. Similarly, if there were questions on any of the problems in that exercise that we didn't go over here after number 10, you can post those to the discussion forum for exercise 8.4 as well. Again, this is all leading up to a quiz that you're going to have to take on identifying fallacies. So make sure you're posting any questions you have in the discussion forums. And also because participation in discussion forums is required while we're not meeting face-to-face. All right, I will soon post some solutions to exercise 8.5. So look for that within the next day or so.